I'd like to welcome everybody to the joint meeting of the Borders Committee and the Southern California Chairmen's Tribal Association. And this is our annual Tribal Symposium. It's Friday, November 20th, 2020. And I want to acknowledge our distinguished guests from the state with us today, including Executive Director Rachel Peterson and Tribal Advisor Kenneth Holbrook from the California Public Utilities Commission. Also, we have Executive Director Dorothy Arthur of California Indian Legal Services with us. As I was saying, I really enjoy these meetings when you're in person. There's a lot of stressful things going on in the world, but I tell you what, when we get together to talk about how to come together and listen to each other, it sure makes the world a better place. And I know it makes our world a better place. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here and our tribal partners and coming together with us. I know it's been a strategic sort of intent of the Borders Committee and SANDAG to have a lot more closer relations with our tribal partners, and especially at the Borders Committee, to make sure that we're focused not just on Mexico and not just on counties, but our most important tribal partners in San Diego County and in Southern California, and across the border as well. So I thank everybody for being here and making the effort to make this happen. And again, it would be much better if we were together in person. And with that, I'd like to ask our clerk to confirm if we have a quorum to start. Again, Francesca?
Yes, Chair Dedina, we do have a quorum.
Great. And just bear with me as we do this virtually. I'm not a Zoom wizard, and I'll try to make sure we get through this fine. But if I do mess up, Francesca, please let me know I'm missing something. I've asked Francesca and the SANDAG staff to make sure that they can let me know who we call on, or they can call on members of the public, so that we don't miss anybody if they want to speak. And now that we have a quorum, I would like to review the process to conduct the meeting in a Zoom webinar virtual environment and revisit the guidelines. For Borders Committee members, please note that you are not automatically muted by the meeting organizer, so you will have to mute yourself, and that goes for everybody in the meeting. Please mute yourselves. In addition, when you would like to speak, please turn on your camera or raise your hand by opening your participant panel on the Zoom toolbar and clicking raise your hand at the bottom. Once we see you, we will recognize you at that time. If you are calling in by phone, you may need to enter the *6 to unmute yourself. After your comments, you will be muted by SANDAG staff. If you are calling into the meeting, also please press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment on an item. All comments, whether emailed or live, will be made part of today's meeting record. Are there any questions about that? Comments, questions about the Zoom process? I know this week I took a Zoom webinar, so in theory I should be a certified Zoom expert, but I'm definitely not. So I appreciate all the work it takes to put on these meetings. And so now it's my honor to, I would like to ask Chairman Romero if he would do, I'm sorry, I messed up. And so we are honored to have this joint meeting today between the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, SCTCA, and our Borders Committee. And it would be my honor to ask Chairman Romero if he would do us the honor of blessing this meeting. Chairman Romero, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm not a tech wizard myself either, so it takes me a while to get this situated. But thank you for this great honor, and I appreciate the introduction. Tribal leaders, thank you for being here. Great Father, Mayaha, we ask you to watch over all our people. We ask you to care for all of us. When we face challenging times, we turn to you, Great Father, and ask you for your wisdom and your strength, spiritually, physically, mentally. We ask you again to our ancestors, to ask them to guide us when we make decisions for our people. We want to thank you for this beautiful day of bringing us all together in a good way, so good decisions can be made for the future generations to come. There's so much we need to speak with you about, Great Father. But we ask today, all of us here in this meeting as we sit, for your help. And these are challenging times that we're dealing with, and care for our military, our first responders, and our doctors and nurses that are caring for our people through this pandemic. Great Father, Mapomta te kai, se pipi hat mapsto, Maha, Hai, Han, Itish, Hanno. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I think we're going to do a video. Is that correct? I have that on my,
Correct. Chairman? Yeah,
okay.
At this time, we'd like to introduce the bird singers. These bird singers that are going to see the video here are from Paula. Thank you, Chairman Smith and the Paula Band for allowing us to listen to this beautiful video and the tape of our songs. These songs are messages from their creator, and their creation stories. They tell stories, they pass on messages to our people. And we're honored to have the bird singers from Paula today. So I want to thank Paula, Chairman Smith and the Paula Band for producing this video for us.
Taha Pomeranda Kuping over Chum. Niye Sablum Ivi Pala Au Nena Palko Wishlankala. Damit Achai Chimtachum. Sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na. Shamekuta, 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 shamekuta. Sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na, sequeque na. Shamekuta, 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 shamekuta. Hello, my name is Paul Miranda. I am from the Paula Indian Reservation. We are Copeño and Liseño. My mother comes from the Sabo clan, and my father comes from the people who live by the embankment out in Torres Martinez. We want to wish everybody a happy California Indian Day, and we're going to share some songs with you today. We wish we could be with you in person together like we normally would, but unfortunately, you know, to the current state of affairs, we have to do things virtually. So either way, we're still going to do what needs to be done and how we've always done. So we're here to share. Thank you. Iswit hunwit ashwit ide pumkal achi cham tewam mom yamanaka aya ya mom yamanaka ya mom yamanaka. Iswit hunwit ashwit ide pumkal achi cham tewam mom yamanaka ya mom yamanaka ya mom yamanaka.
California Indian Day, it's very important to us. And I think it was very important that we were recognized, and because we went through a lot, California Indians, and we're still here today, and we're always going to be here. So it's very important about California Indian Day, and that's why we're here celebrating it to you live right here at Paula Indian Reservation. This is where we are, and this is where we're singing from. And on behalf of the Intertribal Bird Singers and Paula Band of Mission Indians, I want to thank you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Thank you.
Etamo
I just want to thank you guys for listening, and hopefully you guys appreciated these bird songs from down here in Southern California. They're taught to us by a man named Mr. Robert Levi. And we're singing for you guys today to show some of our culture from down here in Southern California. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. These songs are to bring the people together and to have a good time. That's what these songs are for. And like the old man used to say, if you guys felt it in your heart, you guys made it feel, you guys felt good, our job's done.
That was absolutely fantastic, and probably the best, that's now considered the best Zoom call ever, and especially government meeting ever. So I want to appreciate, thanks to the bird singers and Chairman Romero for introducing that. Really, I definitely felt that in my heart. So thank you. It was a really good way to start our Thanksgiving week next week. And I know it's going to be a tough week for everybody. The Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association first joined the Borders Committee 15 years ago. This is the beauty of our borders framework, understanding that we can't have a sustainable region without partnering with our neighbors. We have worked through several cycles of the regional plan, discussing our mutual concerns and looking for ways to connect on policy issues that are important to us all. And in each cycle of the regional plan, we have held an important diplomatic regional tribal summit between the boards of SANDAG and the SCTCA, local and tribal governments discussing policy issues of mutual concern and incorporating them in order to really make our communities better and make things better. I think that's the whole point. Much work gets done through our interagency technical working group and tribal transportation issues. And I've been to those meetings, really impressive, and the amount of work that gets done and goodwill that gets done as they meet quarterly and are keeping the lines of communication open for tribal issues. At the last summit in 2018, it was suggested that we create a forum for more frequent interaction. And last year we inaugurated the Tribal Symposium as a means of touching base at a policy level with our tribal nations. As it is Native American Heritage Month, reserving our November Borders Committee seemed like a great opportunity. So I'm looking forward to listening and listening to our conversation today. So Chairman Renero, I'd love to have your thoughts as well. I'll turn it over to you. Chairman Renero, are you there?
I'm muted too. Am I up?
Yep. Wait. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me go again. You're gonna hear it twice, I guess. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to gather with tribal and local government leaders to learn from one another. I want to thank each of the city and county leaders on the Borders Committee for taking the time to be here today. Thank you for the tribal leaders that work day after day to ensure we are part of this conversation. SCTCA and SANDAG boards hold a summit every 4 years to continue the policy discussions that uplift tribal leader voices. Tribal government perspectives, tribal transportation issues as a SANDAG regional plan is being developed. I'm grateful for the leadership of Hassan Equeda and Jane Clough, for all the SANDAG and SCTCA staff for organizing the second tribal symposium that allows these conversations to continue. SCTCA is composed of 24 tribal nations from Southern California. Tribal leaders will share some of their issues our community face, issues that may be familiar to local governments because they require us to work together for the betterment of all communities. It was a little over a year ago that California's highest elected official, Governor Gavin Newsom, acknowledged and apologized for the horrific atrocities inflicted on California Native Americans. To quote Governor Newsom, "We can never undo the wrongs inflicted on the peoples who have lived on this land that we now call California since time of immemorial. But we can work together to build bridges, tell the truth about our past, and begin to heal deep wounds. By continuing to meet like we are today, we're rising to the call of healing the past." Members of the Borders Committee, the Technical Working Group on Tribal Transportation Issues, and SANDAG as a whole have led the effort to engage Indian country. We're stronger together, but we need moments like this to learn about each other to make progress in a good way for all of our communities. Thank you all again for taking the time to be here today. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Dedina and Chairwoman Erica Pinto.
Thank you so much, Chairman Romero. I really appreciate those remarks. And we'll move on to item 2. But before we do that, I wanted to just say I know there are a few members here that will be their last meeting. And one of those is our distinguished member, Supervisor Greg Cox. I know it's his last meeting, who is here for the beginning of the formation of the Borders Committee. And I know he's a personal mentor and colleague of mine who's done a lot for South County and our San Diego County community. So I want to thank Supervisor Cox for all the work that he's done. I know he is a master at getting things done, and we couldn't, for our borders work, at least for the crisis we're suffering in Imperial Beach as a result of Tijuana River pollution, we couldn't have gotten anywhere without his leadership and support. So I want to thank him for all his good work in San Diego. And we'll continue to be working with him, even if he's retired. So with that, we'll move on to item number 2. And I think this is something that is important about acknowledging the past and using our ignorance of the past to talk about what's important for the future, and that's the tribal land acknowledgement. And I want to, even though SANDAG is not a land use authority, the work we do affects the regional landscape. And I know I was at a meeting in Hamul, and we talked about the idea of cultural landscape, which I think is really, really important when we talk about tribal land acknowledgement, and understand how the past history builds into our current landscapes, right? And continuing to acknowledge that. So as we continue to build our relationship with tribal nations in the region, we thought today would be an important opportunity to introduce the concept of a tribal land acknowledgement. And Chair Pinto, Erica Pinto is here to talk about that.
Thank you, Chair Dedina, and thank you, Chairman Romero, for always blessing us and starting us off in a good way on our meetings. I always call upon you to do that. And I want to wish everybody a happy Native American Day. Also, we just celebrated Veterans Day, so I want to acknowledge and thank all of the veterans here and throughout the United States for your service. Good afternoon, honorable tribal leaders and government representatives. My name is Erica Pinto, and I am the chairwoman of the Hamul Indian Village of California. I'm honored to be here today to represent my tribal government, but also Southern California Tribal Chair Association, and with the government partners. For millennia and before any modern government was formed, tribes were self-governing people. We were stewards of this land. We have a profound and endearing relationship to the ocean, valleys, hills, streams, and with the land we now call San Diego. However, for many decades, the history of our people has been ignored, suppressed, and unacknowledged. In response to this, many institutions and governments have initiated land acknowledgements at the start of conferences, meetings, and other events. These land acknowledgements are critical in recognizing the role of Indigenous people and paying respect to our ancestors and our powerful connection to this land. Some agencies have incorporated the land acknowledgements into their letterhead and policies. Others do it only on certain occasions. San Diego State University, the University of San Diego, and the University of California at San Diego all have draft or formal acknowledgements. The EPA, San Diego Gas and Electric also have acknowledged local tribes at tribal workshops or conferences. These acknowledgements are meaningful to me personally. It makes me proud each and every time an acknowledgement is made, whether it be here on my own ancestral land or on the land of another tribe. I'm humbled to be asked today to provide the acknowledgement, to formally acknowledge the original inhabitants of this land, the Kumeyaay people. Today and every day, we acknowledge that San Diego is our traditional territory and that the SANDAG region is home to the Kumeyaay, Luiseño, Kupa, and the Cahuilla people. Our people live and continue to live upon this territory. Our spiritual practices are tied to this land, and we recognize and respect the legacy of our ancestors and their contributions to the sovereignty we enjoy today. Today, we all come together with a strong and shared commitment to do what is right and in the best interest of all the people of San Diego. Southern California Tribal Chair Association look forward to the collaborative efforts on behalf of our tribes and local governments that we work together for the betterment of our county. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the chance to give this land acknowledgement. Thank you, tribal leaders, and thank you, SANDAG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Chair Pinto. I really appreciate that. And if there are any Borders Committee or SCTC members would like to offer any comments or questions on this issue, please, on tribal land acknowledgements, please either turn on your camera or let us know at this time. Anyone? I do have a, and are there, Clerk, do we have any questions from the public at all?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands raised from the public.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Chair Pinto. But I guess one of the things I think would be nice is to figure out, and maybe we can get some direction from staff on this, and how do we initiate a process in which we at least do tribal land acknowledgements at the Borders Committee to acknowledge our tribal partners. But how do we make this more of a practice at SANDAG events? I think that's important since we do encompass the entire region and we do oversee a large area and relationships with our neighbors to the south and obviously counties to the north. It'd be nice to start to figure that out. How do we initiate that process to make this a practice? because I think it is very important.
We'll do that, Mayor. We'll think of a process and we'll get back to the committee.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, we'll work out on a process and we'll come back to the committee with that, absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think that would be a lot, really appreciated. And I know that we're doing a lot of more recognition of cultural landscapes and resource management with interpretive signage. I think that's a good sign. But we definitely need to do a lot more. And I really appreciate even acknowledging the idea of cultural landscape, which is so important. It really, really opens us up to understanding how we've transformed the environment, right? That we had this moving away from this idea of a wild landscape or an untouched landscape to understanding that people have been inhabiting these areas for a long time. And I think it's a really important concept.
Of course.
So thank you so much. So now we'll move on to item number 3, and that is a work plan for memorandum MOU between SANDAG and the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association on the implementation of the regional plan. And I will turn it over to Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dedina, Chair Romero, Chair Pinto. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Hello?
you.
You can
We
hear
can
me?
hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm going to start over again. Chair Romero, Mayor Dedina, Chair Pinto, tribal leaders, council members, mayors, supervisors, good afternoon. I think it's afternoon, right? We've been at this since 9 o'clock. I want to thank you. This is a great meeting and happy Indian Nation Day, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you with your loved ones coming up. I know it's like Mayor Dedina mentioned, it's a difficult one, but we'll get through it and we'll hopefully celebrate somehow, somewhere. Tribal nations have a long history of planning and resilience, something we should all respect and learn from. And just to be honest about it, for too long, their issues has been and concerns have not been woven into the region's landscape or the regional planning. This memorandum of understanding changes that. This memorandum of understanding on regional plan implementation is the culmination of a year-long dialogue with our partners from the Indian nations. I had the pleasure of meeting with most of the tribal leaders, Chairman Ramiro, Pinto, Bo, everyone actually, where we tried to figure out a way how we move forward so that all these collaboration become real, become tangible. And so as part of the regional plan development in 2018, the board of SANDAG and the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association agreed to open a set of collaborative strategy areas which we could work together. To ensure that we cooperate on planning and design to support prosperity, SANDAG committed funding to facilitate this effort. I made available an additional $200,000 just to make sure the tribal nation have enough resources to work with our teams to make sure that the long-awaited improvement, transportation improvement, is included and taken seriously. And so our vision for the 2020 regional plan incorporated significant number of transportation projects identified in the interregional tribal transportation strategy, but there is still much work to be done. And so we want to enhance that collaboration. We want to make sure that we put some of the priorities for the tribal nation at the front of the line. And I can assure you today that we didn't add resources, and we're not saying this just to say it. We want to be true about it. And some of our elected leaders who are on our board, Mayor Dedina and Councilman Moreno know that I don't do things just to do it. I do it for a purpose. And the purpose here is truly to live up to what Mayor Dedina started and what Chairman said. We're one entity that's trying to do the right thing for a big region. And I, as an executive director of SANDAG, I welcome any other suggestions for us to collaborate better, for us to compete better. As I announced at the board today that President-elect Biden have announced his transition teams. The transportation team has some very good friends of ours. The chair of that transition team is Phil Washington, who's the head of Metro, who's a good friend. Others from the region. We told the board today we would like to hear from you if you have priorities, because we believe they're going to be a national stimulus package coming up. And I extend that to the tribal nation. Let's work together to make sure the region competes for whatever stimulus is going to come our way. And the deadline to do that is December 4th. So I hope the tribal leaders here will call us if they need help in putting things together. But I'm really honored to be part of this new MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the tribal nations. And I'm honored to know that after meeting with all the tribal leaders, I'm convinced that we have one goal, and that is to be a better region, to preserve the land and to be sustainable into the future. So with that, Mayor Dedina, I'm going to turn it to the Executive Director of SCTCA to share more details on the collaborative strategy action and what we'll be working on. So, Mr. Dennis Turner.
Okay, thank you, Hussein. Good afternoon to everyone. I am Dennis Turner. I'm the Executive Director for the Southern California Tribal Chairmen Association. And as Hassan has said, we have signed an MOU between SANDAG and SCTCA. And it really marks, a new chapter and engagement with the tribal nations in implementing of the SANDAG regional plan. In the past, Native nations and people have long been invisible, but we are changing that. We now have the citizens, the leadership of all the cities and areas of Southern California recognizing it. We've also had engaged with it, our consultant, Mike Conley, who is also a professor and strong advocate of what we are trying to do with this collaborative strategic action work plan that we're calling the MOU. Since we've had a number of policy workshops and tribal summits back to 2018, we now know that we need to address these, and SANDAG is helping us addressing them. This is a continued unique opportunity with a lot of elements that has facilitated more resources to work with on these elements. This MOU provides us the mechanism for us to work together in an unprecedented way. As Hassan has said, there's a significant number of tribal transportation projects identified in the Interregional Tribal Transportation Strategy. Though this funding, we are in process of bringing on board technical assistance, as I just mentioned, Mr. Conley, an expert in updating these priorities into a reality for all of our tribal nations. To that end, we are closely working with the Tribal Transportation Group. We are in internal discussions on new ways to collaborate with SANDAG on mutual legislative priorities. To that end, I think that we are making advance. We are managing the MOU here and moving forward with the various committees that our tribal leadership sit on. Our staff has been working with tribal experts and leaders in the special area of cultural resources, energy, habitat conservation, both within the MOU and in parallel efforts with the people of the Southern California region. Another topic, though, is the economic development that has been hard hit by the COVID pandemic, particularly in our gaming and hospitality industries. Collectively, the tribes of the region have responded effectively in responsibility to this hardship, and we are hopeful to pull out of this together with our neighboring jurisdictions. This event has been a clear message for all of us that we need diversification in our economy. The breadth and depth of our economic relationship needs more analysis and understanding, and the MOU gives us that starting point to achieve this goal. In the next few months, we plan to have substantive progress within these subject areas, and we hope to share them with all of our regional collaborators and in the regional plan. So we think this is a significant tribal contribution that we're going to set forth. With that, I want to conclude and say thank you, and we'll move on from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Turner and Hassan. We really appreciate that. And before we move on, are there any Borders Committee or SCTCA members who have any comments or questions? Great. And do we have any members of comments from the members of the public?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands raised from the public.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. And again, thanks, Mr. Turner and Hassan. We do appreciate it. And now we'll move on to the next item. And that's item number 4, evolution of cultural resource legislation. And we have Honorable Marcus Cuero, SCTCA of the SCTCA in the Campo Kumeyaay Nation, and Dorothy Alter of the California Indian Legal Services. And this will be an overview on several pieces of legislation in California, which have strengthened the ability of tribal governments to be consulted regarding land use and other planning efforts will be presented. And so Chairman Cuero, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, cultural resources is something that's very important to a lot of Native American nations. Right now, there's a big battle for us, the Kumeyaay people, along the border wall, and it's something we're really focused on. That being said, I really commend you all for having this topic on your agenda. I'd like to introduce Dorothy Alter, the Executive Director of the California Indian Legal Services. Ms. Alter is an award-winning attorney who has received the highest awards from her peers in the field of Indian legal services. Her distinguished career has covered work with tribes and tribal entities on a broad range of tribal governance and building tribal program law. Her expertise is sought in a wide range of training programs to tribes as a consultant on pending legislation. She's a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe, a graduate from the University of South Dakota, and earned her JD from Northwestern University. She'll speak with us today on the existing and upcoming laws regarding cultural resources.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, thank you and good afternoon. I don't believe I have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to just jump right into this. I want to thank Chairman Cuero for that very nice introduction. We're going to talk about really sort of laws that I think many of you are probably familiar with, but I do want to sort of go through them just to refresh everybody's memory of what the state consultation, the most significant state consultation laws are on cultural resource protection. Am I in charge of this PowerPoint? Oh, thank you. So we're gonna start with AB 52, which is an amendment to CEQA. And I couldn't help but note that the title of this is the evolution of cultural resource legislation. And actually AB 52 is a good example of that. We're going to talk a little bit about AB 18. And actually, prior to that, the focus was always amending CEQA to further, to add really substantial protections for cultural resources. There were none. There was no required tribal consultation. Although it was strongly encouraged that agencies do consult with tribes, and there were executive orders encouraging agencies, there was nothing in the law that required them. So AB 50 or SB 52 is really an evolution of the changes that have come about in California on this issue of consultation. It was passed in 2015. And it requires that all public agencies consult with tribes. And I want to specifically note here that that includes tribes that are not federally recognized. So this includes all tribes recognized and not recognized by the federal government. The consultation is that the agency is provided, we're going to talk about this on the next slide a little bit more, a standing request or a letter from the tribe identifying projects that are going to be advancing or development in any geographical area that is their traditional and culturally affiliated territory. The next slide. So really the triggering of the requirements of AB 52 is this letter, all right? Without a request for consultation, there is no legal obligation under the law for agencies, counties, cities, to actually hold consultation with tribes. That's why it's so critical, so important that all tribes have completed a letter of requesting consultation with an identified geographical area. The project must be involving an effect on any tribal cultural resources. And those have been very broadly expanded upon. And that includes a site feature, a place, cultural landscape, sacred site, or sacred place or objects, which have cultural value to the tribe and that they are either on or eligible for a listing on the California Historic Register or another local historic register. So these are sort of the requirements that come into play. First of all, the county, city have to have this letter on file from the tribe identifying their geographical areas and requesting consultation for any projects in those areas. The project may affect a tribal cultural resource. That's a determination made generally by the county or the agency. And then it defines what those cultural resources are, and also the added requirement that it be either on or eligible for the California Historic Register. Next slide. I did want to lay out the notification timelines. Is that there's 14 days after the decision to undertake the project or determine that the project application is complete. That is when the notice to the tribe on consultation needs to be sent. One of the things that I really like about AB 52 is that it brings the tribes in at the beginning of the process. I'm old. I've been around for a very long time. I've been practicing Indian law for over 30 some years. And what I am most familiar with is receiving a tribe receiving in the mail about a 3-inch environmental document, either an environmental impact statement or a report from whatever agency, and being asked to tell us what you think about this. And by that point, consultation is very difficult because the project is so far advanced that it's very difficult to try and get meaningful mitigation. But one of the things about AB 52 is it brings the tribe in at the beginning, so that you're not coming in when the project's getting, one step away from being, approved for environmental clearance. So these timelines are really critical, and they're very important that, these notices are going out 14 days after the application for the project's been determined to be complete. That's great. It's getting notice to the tribes early. And then the tribes have 30 days to respond on whether or not, they want consultation on this project. But the notice has to also include a project description, location, and the lead agency contact. Again, this is so important. I have worked with tribes that, they get these notices and you have no idea where this project is in relationship to, the tribe or cultural resource areas. And so, it's very, very helpful when these notices go to the tribe that they identify the project and the location. So, and then if the tribe does respond that, yes, they do want to have consultation on this project, it has to begin within 30 days of the tribe's reply. So it's kind of a shorter timeline, but that's important because like I said, these projects are usually on a very, deadline. They need to get these projects through. And so it's great that tribes are being brought in early and timely. Next. The consultation hopefully will result in mitigation measures. And these are really nothing new. Avoidance and preservation is always at the top. If there's a way to avoid the cultural resource, that obviously is the preferred mitigation measure. Treating the resources with cultural appropriate dignity. Again, this kind of depends on what kind of resources the development or the project is going to uncover. Especially if there's human remains that are unearthed, that they be dealt with in a very appropriate and dignified way. Setting aside permanent conservation easements. This is very popular. I've worked on several of these where the area, it kind of goes up to number 1, which is preserving the resources in place, which is good. And a way of protecting that is through these conservation easements. And then just protecting the resources overall. And sometimes the resources hopefully do not have to be damaged or destroyed if they can actually be removed and preserved and provided to the tribe. But these, like I said, I've written these before. This is the order of what we want. The next slide. So now we're going to talk about SB 18 consultation. And like I said, this was the first shot out trying to get tribal consultation on cultural resources enacted. And like I said, they really wanted this to be a CEQA amendment, but it was too difficult. So they started with the general plans. And that's kind of what you were talking about, the regional plan. Well, as we all know, counties and cities also have their general plans that have to be updated. I thought most of them were 5 years. I think some of them can go out to 10 years. What triggers SB 18 consultation is any amendment or adoption of a general plan or a specific plan or a designation of open space. I know that when this first passed, there was a lot of confusion about having sort of the amendments or a specific plan, whether or not that would trigger this. I think that's been pretty well settled. The local government sends the proposed information to the Native American Heritage Commission and requests contact information for any of the tribes with the traditional lands or places located in the geographical area that may be affected by any proposed changes in the general plan. And I know that depending on what part of the state you're in, this actually generates a lot more consultation than I think maybe originally was envisioned. I practiced up in Bishop, California. Inyo County updates theirs every, I think, 10 years. So not a lot of consultation gets triggered there. But the important thing is that the local governments are contacting the Heritage Commission to obtain those names, and are also being given, like I said, the geographical area that the change may involve. Usually you see this with developments. Down here, what I've seen is that there needs to be a general plan amendment in order to accommodate a certain development that's going in, and it isn't necessarily completely consistent or provided for under the general plans. So that's going to need an amendment. So next slide. The notice has to be very clear. And this is now the notice where the city, the county, or the agency in charge has contacted the Heritage Commission. Heritage Commission has sent them back the identification of the tribe and whose area this project may be affected by. And now the notice going to the tribe is a purpose of why this amendment usually or an upgrading of the general plan is needed, a description of what's going to be provided in the change, maps accompanying the description. Again, this is really important. Projects, they're hard to sometimes decipher. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes you can't even figure out where they are. So it helps to have maps. And the deadline date for tribes to respond, the government representative for the contact information, and also contact information for the project proponent or the applicant, if applicable. Next slide. The tribe has 30 days, I'm sorry, the the Native American Heritage Commission has 30 days to provide the contact information. And I should qualify that recommended time. Actually, there is no statutory time, but it's recommended that it be at least within 30 days they're responding to the local government with the tribal contact information. The tribe then, once they're contacted, have up to 90 days to indicate whether or not they want to be consulted on the project. Next slide. This is actually applicable to both 18 and 52. Consultation is concluded when parties reach a mutual agreement concerning appropriate measures for preservation or mitigation, or either party acting in good faith and after reasonable efforts conclude that no mutual agreement can be reached for any appropriate measures. I just want to add one thing that has come up a lot in both the consultations under 52 and 18 that I've been involved with is who are the tribes consulting with? And tribes that I've worked with, not necessarily here in Southern California, we're a statewide program and I kind of work all over, is that a lot of times tribes are in consultation with the planning department. And I know that a lot of tribes have been very angry about that there should be more government to government relationships and that they should be actually meeting with the decision makers. I'm not so sure. I haven't been that involved with any of the consultation under SB 8 or 15 or 18 and 52 down here as much. I've done some consultation, but it is just something I wanted to note for you that is an issue that I actually am dealing with that right now out of the area with another tribe who was basically sent to talk to their planning department, and the tribe was upset with that because they felt they should be meeting with the actual decision makers. Next slide. And I just wanted to add this real quick. AB 275, CalNAGPRA amendments. Some of you may know that I was involved in the KCRC litigation against the 3 UC professors who were trying to prevent the repatriation of some human remains that were discovered at the UC San Diego. And so I became very astute on federal NAGPRA. And over the years, I've never quite paid much attention to CalNAGPRA because there were never any implementing regulations. So there was no real way to use that law effectively. That has changed. Actually, a sort of rewrite of the amendment or of the legislation has been approved. It was sponsored by Representative Ramos, and it was signed by the governor. And what it does is it basically brings the statute, number 1, up to date. Number 2, it resolves any of the conflict between the state law and the federal law. I'm actually involved in this project, and myself and my consultant, what we were finding is that reading through the old law, there were places there was a real problem because the 2 laws were in conflict. And hopefully with these amendments, we've accomplished doing away with that. I did want to note for you that 275 does cover cities and counties and other political subdivisions. And it is involving any of those entities that are in possession of human remains and cultural items. You are required to conduct an inventory and some summary of those items and remains in consultation with the tribe. Next slide. Again, California tribes include both recognized and unrecognized tribes. The list of tribes that you should consult with again, are going to be available through the Native American Heritage Commission. It's essentially the same list that controls the consultation for SB 18. The remains and items from a tribe's Aboriginal territory that will be included in your summaries and also your inventories when you are seeking consultation. So again, it's taking into account the geographical area for that particular tribe. And also the way the law is written is that if there is a request for after consultation for repatriation, the request must be honored unless there is some question about whether or not that tribe is culturally affiliated with the particular human remains or items. But it does provide for a much more direct path for repatriation. Next slide. That might be it. I think that's it. I only had 15 minutes, they told me, so I had to talk really, really fast. But I'm more than willing to take questions if that's allowed. I don't know. If not, just you can call me. Most of you know how to get a hold of me, but we're at California Indian Legal Services. My office is in Escondido. I'm working remotely, but if you call my office and leave me a message, it will be given to me and I can call you back, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Althler. That was great, really important stuff. So really appreciate that. And we do have an opportunity for people that make comments or ask questions. So do any Borders Committee or SCTCA members have any comments or questions?
Chairman Mazzetti, could you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
I didn't know if I'm on. Okay. Couple of comments. One, the law is what it is, but it's leading to conflicts between federally recognized tribes and those that claim to be tribes. That's an issue I think everyone should be aware of. It's going to intensify as time goes on. The other thing, in these laws that are in place, one thing that we need to start, and that's why I'm talking to our partners that are online here, we need to start incorporating the fact of a tribe's Federal Reserve water rights. Water rights need to be discussed. They need to be incorporated in more of these documents. So that's something that as time goes on, we'll work on. But just for our partners around here, we need to discuss and think about tribes' water rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions or comments? And questions or comments from members of the public as well?
Chair Dedina, this is
Yes.
Viv.
Are there questions from the public?
Not from the public. I do believe Councilmember Moreno would like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Of course.
No, thank you. I'm happy to see that legislation is being passed that gives power back to our tribal nations. I think these are steps towards the right direction as we try to right the wrong. We do have to acknowledge that we are in tribal land and that the tribal nations were here before us. I do support the planification of transportation in tribal land and assisting them in receiving these federal funds to make these projects come to fruition. So thank you very much for this in-depth presentation. And I look forward to seeing more legislation like this passed in all government levels. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno. Sorry for the miscommunication. Anyway, and any additional questions or comments from members of the committee or the public?
I don't see any other hands raised, Chair.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much, Ms. Althor. We appreciate all the great work you're doing. And I know that in the case of a proposed private toll road through San Mateo Watershed and San Onofre Beach State Park, the issue of cultural resources and a cultural landscape was critical in helping push back that project and leaving it as it is, which was great. So I think that was a really educational experience for a lot of those of us who were involved in that issue, and a really important one. So appreciate the fact that this is now beginning to be more widely adopted and is prescribed under the law. So thank you so much. And now we'll move on to item number 4, which is the evolution of cultural resource legislation. And before I turn over to the Honorable Cody Martinez, I think Hassan wanted to make just a couple comments.
Yes,
and
sir.
introduce this item.
Yeah, actually, it's item 5. The CP.
Item 5. I'm sorry, California Public Utilities Commission Tribal Land Transfer Policy. Thank you.
Yes, and I want to thank all of you first of all, but also I would like to thank the Public Utility Commission for joining us for this important meeting today. I know Rachel, I know you'll be seeing you and your chairperson, Ms. Batjir, in a few weeks. I just want you to know all that our working relationship with the Public Utility Commission is important. I know we were at the commission last year, and we were talking about collaborating, especially on the data that's under the jurisdiction of PUC, and would like to continue that. But today I'm really want to welcome Rachel and Kenneth and thank them very much for participating in this discussion. Thank you, Chair Dedina.
Thank you, Hassan. I appreciate that. And now we have, it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Connie Martinez from the SCTCA, the Siquan Band of Kumeyaay Nation.
Good afternoon, Chair Dedina and members, tribal leaders and members of the Borders Committee. I am pleased to introduce two representatives from the California Public Utilities Commission today. They will be discussing the new tribal land transfer policy that was adopted and is presently undergoing guideline development. Ms. Rachel Peterson. Rachel is presently serving as the CPUC's acting executive director. Rachel has worked at the CPUC since 2011 in several leadership positions, including chief of staff and advisor to commissioners, acting director of the new Safety Policy Division, and most recently, deputy executive director for the Safety Enforcement and Policy. She has experience in numerous areas of the CPUC's utility regulation, including electricity, gas, safety, and transportation, and has also led initiatives to bring greater transparency to the CPUC's processes. Rachel is an attorney and former nonprofit executive director and lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her family. Also speaking today with Rachel is Mr. Kenneth Holbrook. Kenneth Holbrook of Davis, California is the governor's appointed tribal advisor at the California Public Utilities Commission. Mr. Holbrook has been president at Native Forest Resources Incorporated since 2019. He was executive director at the Madu Summit Consortium from 2012 to 2019. And as well, Mr. Holbrook is founding member and vice president at Tesmam Kohom Foundation. I might have butchered that slightly, my apologies. And was the chief information officer and director of the board at Native Land Trust Council. So we are very pleased to have these individuals from the CPUC speaking with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Martinez. And so now take it away, Rachel and Kenneth. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, excellent. I phoned in as well as went on video. That's why there's a lone phone call in to make sure that I had enough bandwidth to access the event. So good afternoon, everyone. And first to the chair, to Honorable Martinez, Hassan, thank you so much for having Kenneth and me speak this afternoon. It has already been a very meaningful and informative meeting. I am so glad that I joined at the start and then I was able to watch the dance presentation at the beginning. And just hearing Dorothy speak just now, I'm an attorney and I was taking notes because it was very helpful to hear her unpacking of AB 52. So as Cody said, I am the acting executive director of the CPUC. I really wanted to start by mentioning that one of my roles is that I served Commissioner Leanne Randolph for 5 years, ending about a year ago. And she has been one of the many people involved in stewarding one of the more historic agreements between tribes and state governments and private sector actors. That historic agreement that was reached this week between the state of California, state of Oregon, the Yurok tribe and the Karuk tribe, and then last Berkshire Hathaway, which owns Pacific Corp, which is regulated by the CPUC. She spoke about it very movingly yesterday during the commission's business meeting. And so if anyone is interested in hearing her connection to that historic agreement, we do post our recordings of our voting meetings, and it should be available by Monday, but it was a very, really moving moment that she spoke about. And what a wonderful week it is that another, that often fragile agreement has kind of lived to see another day, hopefully with strength and durability this time. And I also just wanted to start by saying that Kenneth and I today are going to speak about staff perspectives on the various policies. The way the commission works is that the 5 commissioners are the formal actors. We cannot speak for them. Anything we say is really ultimately decided by the commission. So as a lot of you know, I think that the proposed implementation of the tribal land transfer policy is on the commission's agenda for a December voting meeting, and that's where a final formal action is going to take place. With that, I think we'll jump right in. I think Kenneth and I are going to jump back and forth between slides. So if we could move to the next slide, please, and I'll turn it over to Ken.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel. Sound check. Hi, hopefully I'm audible.
We can hear you, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, I'd like to begin by thanking Cody for the introduction, as well as Hassan for your comments prior. Thank you very, very much, Mayor Dedina, for moderating today's meeting. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today, and to my fellow panelists, certainly I've learned a lot as well. But most especially to the distinguished leaders of the tribes and to the members of SCTCA. It's a great honor to be able to come here today and to be able to share a little bit about the work that we're doing at the staff level at the CPUC. So yeah, to dive right in, the topics that we'll basically be covering today are a basis for the tribal policies of the CPUC, and what has really evolved through time and legislation to get us to where we are today. We'll speak a little bit about the policies that we've enacted to date within CPUC in response to legislation and in response to all that we continued learning in our role as regulators and partners to the tribes of California. We're going to speak specifically of a couple of policies. So the tribal consultation policy, we're going to dive into, explain a little bit of its origin and its formation and how it is involved in the work that we do now. We'll also speak a little bit about sort of what's ahead for TCP as we get into a stage of review of that policy and how it's working for us in 2021. So we're also going to speak about a very, very exciting policy that is still in progress. It's the tribal land transfer policy. We're going to speak about the core principles and the implementation guidelines that are in draft stage and working its way through proceeding now. Again, speaking a little bit about sort of what's ahead in 2021. And then we're going to attempt to provide some resources that are useful to folks in this particular audience that we have on our tribal webpage, the CPUC website. So those are some of the major areas that we're going to hit on today. Rachel, I'll hand it back to you for the next slide.
All right. All right. So I am certain that everyone on this is very familiar with the executive orders that have been issued at the governor's level over the past decade or so. And of course, Dorothy went into very excellent detail on AB 52. What I actually wanted to point out on this slide is the Public Utilities Code section 851. So this is a section of law that dates from another era, and it's really about commission review of an investor-owned utility that wishes to dispose of or encumber property or assets in some way. Now, that code section applies to the idea of property that's much larger than real property. It actually can apply to financial instruments, easements, all sorts of forms of assets. But the key to this piece of law is that the commission has a responsibility to make sure that the utilities in California provide safe and reliable service. That's electricity, gas, water, telecommunications. And so certain of those are essential to life. And so the commission's responsibility is to ensure that no utility simply sells off its assets in a way that would not allow it to any longer provide that safe and reliable service. So that's one of the pieces that form the basis for the tribal policies that Ken and I are going to speak about. All right, next slide.
Thank you.
Ken.
Yeah, so just to kind of give the high level review of the timeline that's sort of brought about some of these policies, and we'll get more into the details a little later, but just that in 2015, when AB 52 was passed and it created the mandate that state agencies form a tribal consultation policy and begin the process of following that legislation, it took us a little bit of time to get to that point because we did a really comprehensive public participation period and worked closely in coordination with the Brown and the Newsom administrations in forming our initial tribal consultation policy, which was passed in 2018. In 2019, after a number of workshops and a public hearing, I think it was December 2019, the commission passed the resolution for the tribal land transfer policy. And so what that is a policy itself, which guarantees a right of first refusal to tribal entities when seeking out a acquisition of land that is to be dispossessed by an investor-owned utility on what's considered their ancestral homelands. And again, we'll talk about the details of that more as well. And so in 2020, and we're continuing to do this now, the Energy Division has worked comprehensively to take the intent of that policy and then develop guidelines so that we can ensure that the implementation of that policy will be done by all of the IOUs and will be consistent with the same consultation expectations. And we're hoping to improve outcomes by that. We've sought out the feedback and the input of tribes around the state in multiple rounds of public comment in the continuing development of the guidelines. And it's certainly something that we're proud of, and I believe that the Energy Division staff has worked very, very hard to fully consider the wide range of comments that we received during that period from tribes as well as local governments and the IOUs as well, who will be impacted by the new policy. And that work will continue into 2021. So
All
I
right.
guess the next slide, right? Core principles for the consultation policy. Rachel, back over to you.
Yes. So the consultation policy is available on our website. I think we have a resources slide at the end. And I drew these core principles straight out of what the commission wrote in 2018, excuse me. On this one, I really just wanted to call out the bullet about giving meaningful consideration to tribal interests when addressing issues in the CPUC's jurisdiction. As a staff member, when I read that, that tells me the way that the commission wants me to approach issues and to approach the question of consultation government to government. And if we can go to the next slide, I spoke with Stephanie Green before today because I wanted to understand and get some context for some of the examples of consultations that she has worked on since the CPUC appointed her as tribal liaison in 2018. She told me that by far the three largest topics on which tribes request consultations are wildfires, public safety power shutoffs, and broadband services. And you can see there the long list of tribes and tribal nations that have requested consultations and held them on public safety power shutoffs. This is an area that we've dropped Ken into right away when he started because California had such an active wildfire and PSPS season this year. We have consulted with Karuk and Yurok tribes on a rural broadband initiative along the Klamath River. We have been working with the San Pasquale Valley Indian tribe on their microgrid community solar project. I am really proud of the $5 million Tribal Technical Assistance Grant Program in which Ken and our other staff person, Karen Exersley, have really been assisting tribes in understanding their broadband infrastructure needs and developing appropriate technical applications to use our California Advanced Services Fund dollars to obtain greater broadband access for their tribes. And then, you know, within the T-Mobile Sprint merger, there were efforts to make sure that T-Mobile actually supplied a real name and email address and person to be the tribal contact as the merger moves forward and T-Mobile has a number of obligations to meet. We were successful in ensuring that there is a tribal contact. So these are just some examples of the way that Commission staff have really sought to operationalize that meaningful consideration that's embedded within our consultation policy. All right, next slide. And back to Ken.
Thanks, Rachel. And if I may just make a tangential comment referencing portions of the earlier part of today's meeting, speaking about meaningful engagement. I just want to share that I'm personally so encouraged and heartened to witness what clearly is an evolution of the meaningful engagement between SANDAG, the Borders Committee, and SCTCA and the tribal leaders of this region. And so in all cases throughout the state, when we see government to government consultation occurring as it should with real outcomes that we can point to and hold on to, it's of great value, I think, to the generations of tribal people who continue to come along and hopefully enjoy better and better livelihoods as tribal people in California. And again, so much thanks given to the tribal leadership on the phone today and for the continuing work you do. But back to the presentation, just wanted to share a little bit about the tribal consultation policy, the tribal land transfer policy, and any policy really at CPUC that we enact. It is aimed to serve the sovereign governments and the federally recognized tribes of the state of California, which there are 109, 110, depending on who you speak to. And but also beyond that as well, to serve the needs and the interests of non-federally recognized tribes as well. And we feel that it's a great opportunity for continuing collaborations to happen. And I think in honoring comments shared earlier in today's meeting, there's also opportunity for us to come into situations where we'll learn new ways to resolve conflict as well. So again, AB 52, consistent with the language in that, we are here to serve tribal governments, and there's very specific language in AB, in B1011, describing exactly how that will go. It's less specific for non-federally recognized tribes, but it is our intent to serve all the tribal peoples of California. Next slide. So again, we've covered a lot of this already, but I think it's important to note the timeline of our policies. Really, I think the most important piece of this year is what's next and what's coming in 2021. Rachel mentioned that the commission will be hearing the resolution for the guidelines to implement tribal land transfer policy at the very tail end of this year, and work to coordinate with IOUs as these opportunities come along. Beyond that, it will really be beginning to take place in 2021, and there's going to be a lot of learning, I think, for all sides. And we very specifically look to doing an internal review followed by some public workshops and perhaps even some public participation hearings in the future regarding a review of the tribal consultation policy and amendments to that policy if those are found to be appropriate. So next slide. So again, as mentioned, we do have a tribal web page on the California Public Utilities Commission public website. And so the links are provided here for folks to learn more. And I believe that our slides will be available. But if you would like any of these links, perhaps our facilitator or ourselves are happy to provide those to you. Please feel free to reach out. And I believe on top of these digital resources, I'd like to think of myself as a resource in my role as a tribal advisor at the CPUC. It's a new role. And along with my partners, Stephanie Green, the tribal liaison, Hector Garcia, her staff, and the many folks within the ranks of the CPUC staff, we really do care about improving the work that we do, as well as hearing and learning more about the interests of tribal communities in the state. And this, I always believe, is best done in a person-to-person arrangement. Though physically we're prevented from doing a lot of that at the moment, you know, I really do want to extend a personal invitation to folks to reach out either by email or phone or whatever way is easiest for you to be in touch with myself and Stephanie and any of the other staff that can be helpful at CPUC. Yeah, it's worth stating. And that's the last of my information to share. I'd like to hand it back over to Rachel, perhaps for a closing comment. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to this very important group today.
Same message. Thank you all very much for the chance to speak, and please, we're happy to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And Kenneth, we really appreciate that overview. And thank you, Chair Martinez, for introducing the item. And now, do we have any Borders Committee or SCTCA members who have any comments or questions?
I got a comment. This is Eric LaChapa from La Posta Band of Mission Indians.
Go ahead.
Being one of the tribes out here in the rural East County with Campo and Manzanita, we do incur a lot of power outages out here. And when they say rolling power outages in the city, when it comes our way, it stays out. It seems it stays out all day. They just turn ours off and to me, it feels like they just forget about us and they don't rotate like they're supposed to do. I'm just kind of curious about that issue with the power outages. You know, that's just the way it seems to me. It might not be that way, but it seems like when they had the rolling power outages, ours is out all day, no matter what. You know, maybe even a day and a half to 2 days. You know, so I just want to get your comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I can comment first. So we did, unfortunately, have two different types of outages this year, especially in August. In August, during the heat waves, we had the rolling outages, which is what I think you're asking about. Those are supposed to only last 1 hour to 2 hours, depending on the blocks that different folks are in. So I would love to, which band and where were you located again?
I'm from the La Posta Band of Mission Indians. I'm out here in the rural East County. I'm right next to Campo and Manzanita. And I'm sure that the Manzanita, she's on the line, that can verify this for us too, because when it was rolling blackouts, we were out all day long. And I go, what the heck? You know, I thought it was supposed to be an hour to whatever, but we was out all day. And it just feels, to me, it feels like that they just turn us off because we're not in the city and we don't have whatever businesses and stuff like that in this area, that we just get, it feels like we get kind of picked on. It's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong though. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I will ask Stephanie actually to kind of take a look at what might have happened. I mean, the other type of outage that we also unfortunately experience is the public safety power shutoff, and that one lasts for the duration of the dangerous conditions. So yes, high wind.
I totally understand the difference between the two.
Yeah. So you're talking about the rolling outages. Okay, Ken and I will talk to Stephanie.
Yeah, and I'd echo the same comment. Maybe we could speak to Stephanie as well as some folks within our energy division who track these situations extremely carefully. And if that's a situation, you know, we can pass on that awareness and see if there's anything we can do.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In 2008, the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Energy Consortium, that was at that time made up of 14 tribes, petitioned the California Public Utility Commission to participate in a low-income energy assistance program. And so when we petitioned them with our attorney, we do get your mail every month, but still have never recognized our, number one, our energy consortium, and two, and consistently told us we're not eligible for any of those kinds of CPUC projects or programs. So I'm looking forward to talking to Kenneth and getting an update where we stand with the commission. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much for that comment. Obviously before my time when that happened, so I will absolutely work with Rachel and check in with others who may have that institutional history, and circle back with you and your representatives, and maybe just to dig in a little bit and learn more about sort of where that went, if anywhere, and how to revive some of those talking points.
Okay,
thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
I got one more comment, and I'll make it quick. And I think the growth of California and the rolling blackouts, how is the CPUC going to provide enough power for the growth of the California? How do they plan on providing? If they can't support the grid now at this current, but what happens when it's going to grow, and the questions like that? Thank you.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So we engage in planning extensively, and we actually work with the Energy Commission on their overall forecast of need across California. So they're actually the agency that does that deep dive into how many people, how many businesses, locations, the hoped for continued use of energy efficiency, but then also, you know, electrification is actually going to increase electric needs as well. So we work very closely with them in order to establish those mid and long-term plans. We actually, the commissioners just yesterday opened a rulemaking on extreme heat events for 2021. So this is actually an unusual step for us to take. Normally we're looking at longer range plans, but because of what happened in August, we want to make sure we're prepared, or we look to procure energy for California should an extreme heat event occur again in August of 2021. Not exactly a growth related question, but similar to, I think, what you're asking.
You know, it's also worth mentioning and just tacking on that I know that San Diego Gas and Electric has a tribal liaison assigned to many of these sort of questions, at least from SDG&E's point of view, Jennifer Summers. And I assume that many of the folks on the call today will be familiar with who she is. What I have noticed is that in 2020, there was a lot learned from 2019 events in PSPS. And I just want to bring it up and circling back to a previous question. And I think that Jennifer Summers is somebody that we can rely on to really hear some of these needs and to bring that story back to her decision makers. And so I know with the PSPS events call that happened this year, I was quite impressed by what PG&E did here in Northern California in relation to tribes and the very extensive daily voluminous engagement that was happening there. And so I think that Jennifer and others might be interested in seeing how much they can model some of that same responsiveness and outreach with tribal communities in your region coming up in 2021. So I'll look forward to continue working with folks on in this group and with Jennifer to address those needs.
Yeah, Jennifer's a great resource. Thank you.
Great. Are there additional questions or comments? Well, thank you, Rachel and Kenneth. We do appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dedina.
Yeah, it's great discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Obviously, these issues affect real people in the field, in their communities. So really great to have that dialogue. And we do thank you. And now we'll move on. Any other additional questions from the members of the public?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands raised from the public.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll go on to our last item, and that is item number 6, best practice tribal cultural use water standards. And we'll hear once again from Honorable Eric Lachapa from the La Posta Band of Kumeyaay Nation and the SCTCA.
Hello, my name is Eric Lachapa. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm going to introduce a man that doesn't need no introduction. It'd be my honor to introduce Michael Conley Misquish. He's a citizen of the Campo Cumay Nation, where he served over 17 years in elective office. He is a resource economist, historian, a policy consultant to SCTCA. He will speak on the new tribal use standards for the water quality program. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Councilman LaChapa and Mayor Dedina. Good afternoon, distinguished leaders and members of the public. It's a pleasure to meet with you today and to get the opportunity to discuss the topic of tribal beneficial use water standards. Now, to get a real understanding of this topic, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a historical perspective. So, hit the next slide there. After the United States came in, a few years later, there was a team of negotiators who went throughout California and negotiated 18 treaties with Indian people. And the two treaties that apply to the San Diego County region are the Treaty of San Isabel and the Treaty of Temecula. And between these two treaties within present San Diego County, about 20% of the land base was supposed to be reserved for the Indian people. This didn't happen. The treaties were not ratified, and in order to avoid confrontations over the issues, they actually never told the Indian people that their treaties weren't ratified, and this was due to a lot of people still wanting to find out where there were deposits of gold and other minerals, and people wanting to secure the best water resources, and so the tribes ended up getting fragmented and scattered. Next slide. And they were throughout the region, and even as the reservations were created, starting in 1875, there were Indian villages in many locations outside of the areas where the reservations were created, and you can see even down into the urban area. So there was a village in South Bay, Florida Canyon, Chollas Creek, Mission Valley, Rose Canyon, Lake Murray. So all of these different village sites, and these were the ones that got recorded, and there were probably a lot of smaller locations that were also throughout the area. The last Indian village in the urban area wasn't actually removed until 1915, and that was the Florida Canyon village, where the Indians were removed when the San Diego Panama Exposition was being organized for that location. But even then, there were still Indian people who were living in different parts of San Diego, the individuals or just individual families. And the last Indian who actually got relocated from the urban area was an Indian person in the 1930s who was living on Coronado Island, and he got relocated to Mesa Grande Reservation. So, and then even then, there were still people who were living in those areas who just managed to blend into the population and escape being forced to relocate into the reservation lands. Next slide. So this is how the reservations have developed up into the present day, starting with those 1875 reservations. A big block of them were created in 1892 and 1893, and then there was some more lands added subsequently. But throughout this time period, even though Indian people have been relocated from these urban areas and some of them staying within the urban areas, the use of the resources in these waterways has continued. So people were familiar with the good places to go and to get coolies, the good places to go and harvest different types of foods, medicinal plants, the juncus that's used in basket making, the willows, all of these different plants and that were in the waterways continued to be harvested. So they were harvested before the reservations were created. After the reservations were created, people would still go off reservation. The reservations in many cases weren't the best land as far as the riparian and the water resources that were there. So they'd go to the nearest one that they had continued to be using for thousands of years. They just never stopped. So this type of activity continued on. Next slide. And continued up into the present day. So the materials that we use for things like traditional houses, boats, baskets, foods, medicines, all of those things are still identified at off-reservation locations where people would go and harvest them. Next slide. So to protect surface waters, the U.S. passed the Clean Water Act in 1972, and the act authorized states and actually required states to establish standards that met a certain minimal federal level, and then they could also go above that federal level if they wanted to. And California enacted a program to develop their water standards. Unfortunately, they left tribes out of the original Clean Water Act, and so we were in a kind of a limbo state for about 10 years. And then in the early 80s, there were amendments to the Clean Water Act that allowed tribes to be treated as states for the purpose of establishing water quality standards. So many tribes have gone into the Clean Water Act 106 program for the purpose of water quality protection. Not all of them have developed water quality standards that are federally enforceable. In San Diego County, I believe the only one right now that has an approved federal program is the Rincon Reservation. But many other tribes have used the 106 program to establish standards that they implement internally within the tribe. So since tribes have jurisdiction within their own lands, they can do tribally enforceable standards that they use on their water resources. Unfortunately, this only applies within your jurisdiction. That if you have federally approved water standards, you can enforce off reservation. If there's a polluter outside the reservation that's causing a violation of the standard within the reservation, you can take an enforcement action on them. But other than that, it's really hard to protect the citizenry of the reservation when they go to other areas where they're using materials that they're getting from different water sources within the county. So, next slide. Next slide. Okay. So, in order to address that, and to help, there's a recognition, more and more of a recognition that this activity has been going on. It's never stopped. It's been going on for time immemorial. We've been utilizing the resources of the waterways, and it was just kind of not really really visualized in the development of the state regulations and in the Regional Water Quality Control Board regulations. These traditional uses were never really highlighted as something that needed to be addressed. The fishable, swimmable standards that were established were really oriented toward the urban population or toward the existing non-Indian population. In many cases, Indian people have been very reluctant to even divulge where they're gathering different types of resources because they don't want other people to come in and start taking them too, or to overtax that particular resource. So in order to provide a mechanism for tribes to get protections for these off-reservation resources, the State Water Resources Control Board in 2017 passed Resolution 2017-0027 that provides for a mechanism for tribes to establish their tribal beneficial use standards. In March 2020, the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board adopted tribal beneficial uses as a category in their plan. And this was following some meetings that they had with tribal people, also representatives from SCTCA. So we met with the regional board. The staff at the regional board were very cooperative, and we didn't really have any problem in getting this adopted as a category. But simply as a category doesn't really do anything because we still don't have any specific designations of any waters. There's no specific standards that have been applied to them, and so that's the current place that we're at. Okay, next slide. So in order to enact this tribal beneficial use, the reason that we want to is so that our people will be protected when they're out gathering. And I've been in the San Diego River harvesting tules. I can tell you sometimes there's some strange odors that are coming out of that water, and we don't, there isn't regular testing that's done that considers that type of body contact that might be going on with some of these. We had a similar situation 20 years ago with Caltrans, where Caltrans was spraying herbicides along the freeways, and there were a lot of areas where basket makers would collect materials, and there were basket makers. When a basket maker's weaving a basket, a lot of times they'll use their mouth as a third hand in holding their materials, and there were basket weavers who were talking about their lips and their tongue would get numb or tingly after they've been weaving for a while. And so eventually the tribes were able to work it out with Caltrans where they would identify areas that the tribes did not want herbicides to be sprayed because of the collection activities that they were doing. And so it's been much better now for our people, and they're not being exposed to these potentially harmful pesticides or herbicides that are being used. Same thing that is what we want to see also with the waterways. So when our people go and collect these, not only are they not going to be exposed to potential contaminants that aren't being considered in the present system, in the present regulatory system, but they'll also have it'll also help us with the products that we make too, because many of our people also create products that they sell, and so our customers are buying these products, and they may be getting exposed too if there aren't these adequate protections that are in place. So these are opportunities for us to go in and really identify ways that we can establish tribal standards within these waterways that will more closely parallel the true type of activity that's occurring there. Okay, next. So we had the meeting with the Regional Water Quality Control Board to talk about incorporating the standards in their triennial review. We met with Tribal Chairmen's Association, and there was a vote to support the establishment of tribal beneficial use standards. We applied for an environmental justice grant. It just got awarded this summer to aid us in the effort of coordinating with the tribes in our region. We're working with the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition, which is a tribal member organization in Southern California, to coordinate with the different tribal environmental protection programs on the different reservations. And currently there's one region, the Regional Water Quality Control Board for Region 1 currently has a tribal beneficial use standard. There are other tribes mainly in Central and Northern California that are currently working with their regions also on helping to establish those beneficial use standards. Okay, next. So as I said, we've always been using these resources. They've gone on as long as we've been here. We've been accessing these riparian areas, these streams, and harvesting resources and using them in our traditional usage, using them for our medicines, using them for foods, using them for the different types of products that we make, and this standard is going to be a great opportunity for us to ensure that all of our people are being protected when they're doing this, and they're not being exposed to something that's potentially harmful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate that. Great presentation and great information. And now, if there are any questions or comments from members of the Border Committee or STTCA members?
Mike, or Mayor, this is Dennis Turner. I just want to make a comment.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
In 1982, in Old Town, California, San Diego, there was 20 acres of Kumeyaay land that was under federal control. And without the Kumeyaay Tribe Nation knowing and allowing them the land was then confiscated by the county or city of San Diego through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so this taking of our land, it just has to stop. Anyway, it's a comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. Any additional questions or comments from committee members or CTCA members?
Elsa Saxon does have her hand raised.
Please go ahead.
There, I'm unmuted now. So first of all, very interesting meeting. Thank you, and want to thank all the participants. What I would like to know is if at our next borders meeting, we could hear a little more about what's happening in San Isidro with the closing of the border, and what maybe we could do, maybe send a letter, or I don't know what, but I would like to have an opportunity to hear more about what's happening in San Isidro, and as the Borders Committee, if there is anything we could do to help the community and obviously to open up the border again. So that, not a comment, but a suggestion, I hope, for the next borders meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, great. Any additional questions or comments? Well, thanks again, Chairman La Chapa, and then thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. Really important stuff. And I know the other issue that I work in professionally in ocean conservation is obviously the recognition of tribal lands and tribal waters in our ocean waterways and those cultural resource sites as well. It's an important topic today with the state of California as well and local land agencies, and recognizing that those are as well cultural landscapes that have been ignored. So, and now we have the Supervisor Cox. Did you want to make a comment or?
Yeah, just a brief comment. I want to thank all of the presenters today and very informative, and I sincerely appreciate the time and effort that went into the Borders Committee meeting today. This has been a great opportunity to get a better understanding of a lot of issues regarding our tribal governments in San Diego County. And again, I guess we always come back to the point, I think San Diego County is blessed to have more tribal governments and Indian reservations within San Diego County than any other county in America. And they provide a tremendous resource and are certainly a big part of our history. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cox. And thank you again for your role in creating the Borders Committee and all the great work you've done in San Diego to make things better for our communities, including Imperial Beach. So we do appreciate that. And we're going to miss you a lot. So, yeah, especially your role in addressing border issues, U.S.-Mexico border issues as well. So that we have item number 7, and that's comments from additional communications from members as well as public. But before that, I just wanted to acknowledge that we had, I'm not sure if he's still here, Consul General of Tijuana, U.S. Consul General in Tijuana, Sue Sarnio, who's been a great resource for all of us who are working on the U.S.-Mexico border. I want to thank her for all her leadership as well. And then I wanted to make an announcement that we have 8 tribes from the SCTCA here today: Barona, Campo, Homol, La Jolla, La Posta, Pala, Rincon, and Sequan, plus a California tribe, from San Luis Rey, the San Luis Rey tribe as well. We have all the chairpersons plus staff. So thank you so much for everybody for being here. And I'm not sure if we were going to mention all the committee members that were here as well today. Were we going to do that, Hector?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. You have representing the city, of course, City of Imperial Beach representing South County. You have the City of Escondido representing North County Inland. You have the City of San Diego represented. You have the County of San Diego represented. You also have the City of El Cajon. I'm sorry, no, it's the City of Lemon Grove representing East County. You have the City of Oceanside representing North County Coastal. and you have Imperial County also represented. Also from the Borders Committee, you have representatives from the Consulate General of Mexico, the San Diego County Water Authority, Caltrans, SCAG, and of course, the two members from the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association.
Great. And first, before we, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Before we end the meeting, and I know other folks I would like to make some comments as well, but I wanted to acknowledge Chairman Romero. It's been a pleasure to serve on this committee and at SANDAG with him and to see his leadership to help his communities. We understand that he's retiring at the end of his term in office and thus will not be able to represent the SCTCA on this committee. Chairman Romero, we want to thank you for the work that you have done over the years supporting the collaboration between SANDAG and the tribal nations. Your leadership and advocacy for tribal issues in the region, especially for transportation, has been key. And I know that I personally have learned a lot from you and have appreciated your solid leadership, your leaderful leadership. It's been a real pleasure to serve with you. The hospitality of the Barona Band of Mission Indians, hosting so many of the Tribal Transportation Working Group meetings throughout the years and 2 regional tribal summits is evidence of your support for this important work. As a true statesman and leader in Indian country and in your collaborative dialogue, we thank you for your service. We are very thankful for your service. We have sent you a commemorative crystal desk sculpture that is a scene of our transportation future etched into it, and here present you with a certificate of appreciation. We will miss your participation on this committee and wish you all the best. And I don't know if you wanted to make any comments, Chair Romero, before we acknowledge any other speakers.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for that. It's been quite an honor to sit with and represent the Southern California tribes. It's been an honor meeting many of the mayors that sit on the Borders Committee, and at the time that I sat on the executive board. I honestly believe that San Diego, as mentioned, has the most tribes in any county. It's also to be noted that we are a model for other counties throughout California and across the United States. How our local governments in the city and along with the county can collaborate and work with the tribal nations. And we as tribal leaders stand up to the challenge to work with SANDAG and the local government. So it's been a long road for me, and I appreciate everybody on this call, and I appreciate the words that are spoken, and thank you, Sturge. It's been a great time working with you, Lusan, Jane, everybody on the call. I'm just honored to have been a part of this, and hopefully we can continue on and build the relationship with the tribal nations. The tribal nations are here, and we're not going anywhere. And we must continue to work together, continue to build on one another's strengths for all the future, for the generations to come behind us. We're a mirror for the generations, and we must reflect that back to them in a good way. Thank you, Creator. Thank you, Great Father, for allowing me this time with all the good friends that are on this call and the ones that I've worked with in the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Romero. We appreciated it. And I'm not sure if there are additional comments that other folks would like to make.
Chair Dedina, if
Yep.
I may make a few comments, this is Chairwoman Pinto from Hamul.
Of course, please proceed.
I've had the pleasure over the last 5 years of getting to know Chairman Romero, and he goes back, you know, in my family, many, many years, but we won't talk about that on this web. But it's been such a pleasure and an honor of getting to know him and to work with him. He's always the calm in the midst of a storm, and he's got the gentle way that he speaks, always thoughtful. And I know you're going to be around, Chairman, and I'm still going to reach out to you and bug you when I need some guidance, but I really appreciate you and all that you've done for the people and your people, always a caring, gentle giant. And I wish you the best. Take care.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that so much. Any additional questions or comments? Again, I think the Board of Regents, Chairman Romero, is greatly indebted to you for all your contributions, and we wish you the best on your endeavors. And I know that in this era when people like to be angry and communicate on social media, you teach us and have taught us how to communicate one-on-one, respect and love, and really talking about real things and honesty and trust. I think that's something that I've taken away from these meetings and this partnership, and I really appreciate that. And your skills and your way of being is more important than ever. And so we need to spread that around. I think that's hopefully that was something we can learn from this committee, but more importantly from our tribal partners. We need you more than ever. That's for sure. So anyway, with that, unless there are additional.
Chair Janina, I'm so sorry. I believe Deputy Mayor Feller wanted to speak as well.
Oh, of course, go ahead.
This will be my last meeting, so I wanted to thank you for your leadership, for the knowledge that I've gained about the county and the borders. Although I've lived on the north border before I came to Oceanside, but it's a great committee, and I wish you all success.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation. And at the north end of the county, the northern border of our county. So thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. And with that, any additional questions or comments before we adjourn? Well, great, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us today on this remarkable and very nice tribal symposium. And we look forward to having it next year. We hope all of you have a safe and healthy holiday, an enjoyable holiday next week. And please reach out to us if you need anything. And we will then adjourn. That's my coffee cup on my kitchen table. So anyway, great. Thanks, everybody. And again, thanks, Chair Romero. Appreciate it. And everyone for making the time to be here.
Thank you.